everybody. My name is Harvie S., and I'm here at Harvie's Corner at Kolstein, NYC. And this is a new podcast that we're just starting, and it's called Bass in the Corner. And, of course, when we go to the gig, what do we look for? A corner to put the bass, right? So this is Bass in the Corner. And what I'm doing is interviews with great bass players around New York City who are like the lifeblood of the music scene, not just playing, but teaching and doing all kinds of things with music. And they just don't get this exposure all the time. So I wanted to expose some people. You're exposed. And this is the great Mike Richmond, a longtime friend of mine. And how you doing, Mike?
Good. How are you doing?
Great to see you as always. And we're going to start out is talking about like, what are you doing now?
What am I doing now?
Not this minute, but in the past month.
Well, before I got to Barry's shop this afternoon, been traveling around a little bit in the country.
Oh, nice.
And basically getting ready for school to start.
Yeah. Now, where do you teach?
I'm going into my 36th year at NYU.
Wow. Yeah.
University, and I'm preparing for my next cello CD.
Oh, that's right. I've enjoyed those. Yeah, they're really cool. So you've made a bunch of cello CDs.
Every year I make a cello CD for Steeplechase for Niels Winther.
So how many have you made now?
I haven't really listed cello CDs.
Yeah.
I've been on around 40 or 50, including sideman recordings. Wow. And I think I only have 4 or 5.
As a leader,
As a leader, 4 or 5 or 6.
4 or 5 as a leader. That's great. Playing cello.
I forget exactly.
Because, you're so well known as a bass player. And I got to tell you, I saw you play. I remember seeing you play when I first came to the city. And I said, I'm scared. You scared the hell out of me. I mean, I said, Jesus Christ, this guy is ripping the bass to shreds. I said, I better practice. So, you inspired me to want to try to get better. You set a standard. So anyway, it's really great, what you're doing. So now are you playing around the city at all or around?
I have a couple of gigs next month in September. I'm trying not to take as many gigs. Right. Because I'm at school a few days a week. And I'm not getting any younger, so it's harder and harder.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Out at night, work all day, teach all day, and work at night. So I'm cutting out a lot of gigs. I'm still taking recordings. I always do a couple dates a month as a sideman. Only one date a year as a leader. But so I'm still doing recordings, but schlepping the instrument around after I work all day is not my cup of tea at this point in life. But I practice every day. I'm practicing still.
Yeah, we still got to keep in touch with the instrument. Yeah. I noticed you were looking at the Bussetto. It's a small but a great bass.
It sounds beautiful, and it's great for an older back.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't hurt to lift up.
Right, and I'm telling you, the sound is amazing on those things. I did a festival yesterday, 2 days ago, and we went up in a small car, so I could put this bass in the car. It was so easy, and I'm telling you, it was great for playing bebop jazz. It's amazing. It's like you don't even realize you're not playing a full acoustic bass. It's not like a stick bass. It's like a small acoustic bass.
It feels like an acoustic bass, actually.
That's what it is, really.
It doesn't feel like a stick bass.
Yeah.
So I'll try it a little bit when we're finished.
Great. So now, when you started getting into the bass, see, I love to hear this kind of stuff. I think, if I remember correctly, you were originally a trombone player.
I was always a brass player. I played strings. but I was always a brass player too.
Right. And but then you give me, because obviously you did a big focus on being an acoustic bass player. So what kind of got you in that? What'd you listen to that you said, oh, that did it for me?
Well, there's a few things. When I was around 6 years old, mid-50s,
wow,
my parents went to Bill Haley rock and roll concert. Somebody took us to a Bill Haley concert. So they were playing Shake, Rattle, and Roll, See You Later, Alligator, all the hits that they had. And the bass player, I always forget his name, but he was from Delaware, took a bass solo, and every tune...
Oh, there was bass solos in that band.
But he took a slap solo.
Yeah.
But what he did was, before he started slapping it, and every tune...
That wasn't Bill... What was his name? Bill...
I want to say Lytle from Delaware, from Dover.
Okay.
Maybe from Wilmington or Dover.
Some of those bass players were killers.
Oh, this guy was great. So it came time for a bass solo. No, I didn't know what a bass was. I just saw 5 or 6 guys on stage jumping around, singing, screaming, and everybody in the audience, there's a couple thousand people in the audience, were dancing the jitterbug, like my mother was dancing the jitterbug. I thought, I don't know what these people are doing, but it looks like they're having a good time. And before the bass solo, he put the bass on the floor and sat on it like a pony and slapped it. And it looked like he was riding a pony slapping the bass. And I thought, I have no idea what's going on, but that looks like fun. So, so that was my first experience seeing a bass player play. And then in Philadelphia, there was a radio station called WHAT that was a 24/7 jazz station.
I remember that. I used to get that, listen to it late at night.
I think it was a 50,000
watts.
50,000 watts.
WHAT. I
clear
love
channel
that
station, yeah.
I love that station.
And the theme song for the station was a Maynard Ferguson song, Something for the Blues, recorded in 56 or 57. And there was a great, I always forget his name. He was a New York bass player. You probably would know who it is. Ended up doing a lot of studio work in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and maybe 90s too. And he was a great fisherman too. I just can't remember his name, but I heard him walk this really nice bass line, and I listened to the show after school in the morning before I went to school, public school, college. And I heard that quite a bit, and they played, now this was late 50s, early 60s, so they played a lot of Oscar Peterson, because Philadelphia was a real straight-ahead town.
Yeah,
so
you're listening to Ray Brown.
So Ray was on the records. So Ray became a major, major influence.
I hear that every day from people.
Just from hearing the Night Train record.
I love that.
I wore out so many of the Night Train records, and there was a great Oscar Peterson Trio +1 with a Clark Terry. So it's called Oscar Peterson Trio +1.
Yeah, I know that record.
And transcribed all the bass line, because I didn't know how to play a bass line. I didn't, I could play the instrument at that point. This was 10th grade. But I had no idea how to walk. And my teacher just kept saying, because I would say, what do I play? And he said, just play what you hear. And basically, I was only hearing Bill Haley's bass player and Shake, Rattle, and Roll.
So you're sitting on the bass, riding it like a
so
horse.
I don't think that was. I don't think that was the way to play Cherokee in 10th grade. So I transcribed all of Ray's bass lines from the records, and only played his bass lines when they called tunes with those changes, because I didn't know how to put a line together.
You can't lose with those lines.
And didn't have a jazz teacher. I had a classical teacher at that point, but no jazz teacher. And listened to Ray quite a bit. And then PC with Miles, was always in the radio. I'm a Ron Carter freak, so they were playing Ron all the time with Miles.
Same stuff.
But I transcribed all the bass lines.
Wow.
Because I didn't know how to play my own bass line. And little by little, I would put their bass lines together. The phrase people use now is cut and paste. But I would literally cut and paste the second chorus with the fifth chorus, and the seventh chorus with the ninth chorus, or the bridge of the third chorus, or the bridge of the fifth chorus. So I would cut and paste the whole solo to make it sound like a different bass line, but it was really somebody else's bass line. And little by little, I put it together. using my influences like Ron and Ray.
Great way to learn.
And some Red Mitchell, too. They were playing Red out here,
I love
too.
Red Mitchell.
Yeah. And just use their lines. And those were my main in jazz early bass players that I listened to all the time.
Wow, that's a great story. That you really, that's really a great way to learn how to do it. It's not the only way to learn, but definitely a great way to learn. I mean, now kids can go to NYU and study with you and get all that information that took you a longer time to get. And you've condensed it like, but if you do this and this and that saves that route. You don't have to do all that. And then they can, so I know that you can help people get to the truth faster.
Yeah, I didn't want to forget Jimmy Garrison, too.
And you studied with Jimmy.
Jimmy was my teacher.
Wow, that's amazing.
After Train died, and Jimmy was my jazz teacher. But I listened a lot to Jimmy because they were playing Train all the time. Not on WHAT as much. Actually, they used to play Equinox all the time.
But Equinox is Steve Davis.
Is that Steve Davis?
Yeah.
Okay. But when that came out, they played it all the time. I think it was late 65 or early 66 because I was always in the study lounge at school, at Temple University where I went to school. And Equinox would come on, and I used to think two things. It's so hip to study physics during Equinox, and it's so hip that they play jazz in the study lounge.
That's amazing.
I don't think they do that now. But,
I'm sure they don't.
But it made it easier for me to study, and I played a lot of training. Then later on with Jimmy, and so Jimmy was a big influence too, and I still have him in my head. Yeah, Jimmy's always in my head.
Jimmy is was one of my biggest influences. Especially, I loved the idea of the way he did solo bass stuff alone. Which my opinion of this is. Okay, you hear Coltrane's band. Coltrane plays 20-minute solo of magic. And then McCoy plays like ridiculous thing. And Elvin, of course, is like, and they're let's face it, they're some of the greatest music you're ever going to hear. Then came the bass. Instead of the bass imagine trying to solo after Coltrane and McCoy. God help you. So they lay out, and Jimmy would just play alone. And it was like a good breathing chance to get into something else, and then to come back with the band. So I think that really worked well. Plus, in those days, there were no amps. I saw Coltrane live when I was very young, and you couldn't hear the bass that well. But I didn't care so much because I was a piano player. So I wanted to hear McCoy. I loved McCoy, was my hero. But that seems to be the thing. But Jimmy Garrison was definitely, with Coltrane, the bass players that I loved was Jimmy Garrison, Steve Davis, Reggie sounded great with Train. Those were bass players that could really just give it beautiful thing. Of course, Jimmy. Paul Chambers played in the earlier Coltrane stuff, and you can't beat that. There's one record where Paul Chambers plays with Elvin. It's on Africa Brass. There's one tune with Paul Chambers and Elvin.
Okay.
And Elvin and Paul were unbelievable.
I can't imagine.
Never underestimate Paul Chambers. He could do anything.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. Yeah.
I heard him playing tumbao Latin stuff on Inventions and Dimensions. Ridiculous what he could do.
A big influence, a major influence.
Paul. So now, speaking of recordings, have you made any recordings? Have you ever recorded, Mike?
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
If you brought in all your recordings, you'd need a truck. So, yes, and you brought in your book, which is great, Modern Walking Bass Technique, which has been around a while, and a lot of people have studied this.
For about 40 years.
It's a go-to book. So, great book. And so talk about some of your CDs.
Well, since we're talking about bass, this is my last bass trio CD.
Oh.
And it's Bill Evans tunes with Andy Laverne and Anthony Pinciotti.
Nice.
with a real nice sound. They got a really nice bass sound. And this is my last cello CD.
Yeah.
About 22 years ago, I took up the cello and got pretty serious about it. First, I'll show you the last steeplechase cello CD called "Turn Out the Stars." Also with
Bill Evans stuff.
Andy J. Anderson's on bass, Anthony Pinciotti. Just a short.
I've heard the CD. It's great.
It turned out very well.
Yeah, I loved it.
And the one before that actually was "La Vie en Rose," another steeplechase record on cello. But it was a couple of weeks after 9/11, after we were attacked, and I was feeling pretty bad like everybody else. And my local newspaper, called The Suburbanite, of course, I live in the suburbs, there were some instruments advertised in the back, and I saw 2 cellos advertised. And I had never played cello before. And even in school, I had to learn how to play every instrument, almost every instrument. But I never really played the cello. I didn't study the cello. I thought, well, just have a cello in the house. I'll buy the cello. Barry fixed it up and I got into it. And with the idea of only playing with local amateur string quartets, just to play string quartet music, classical music in my living room. Nothing fancy, not playing for anybody. I didn't want to kill myself. I just wanted to play the cello.
And you tune it like a cello. You don't tune like a bass.
The first 3 years, I tuned it in fifths like a cello. But then people started asking me to play with them and improvise.
Oh.
And I learned how to read in fifths, but I didn't think like an improviser in fifths very well. I was always thinking in
can't
fourths.
imagine.
I was always thinking in fourths. So I switched over. I have 5 cellos, and 2 of them are in fifths and 3 are in fourths. But it ended up I was rehearsing about a week after I bought the cello. I was rehearsing for a recording on bass with a singer. So I'm in my living room rehearsing, and this woman says, "Is that a bass? Is that a cello in the corner?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, my old boyfriend used to play cello. Why don't you bring it to the recording?" And I had only been playing a week. So I said,
"You've been playing a week."
So I said, I'm really hearing this dado in bass. She said, "No, I really want you to bring the cello." So I bring the cello to the recording. We're looking over, and we're playing the first tune, and there was a bass solo in the first tune. We finished the take, and she said, "I'm really hearing a cello solo in this tune," and I had never improvised on it at that point.
Thrown into the fire.
I was just playing scales and reading. I hadn't thought about improvising on it. And so at the recording, I said, as far as a cello solo, I said, "I'm really hearing a bass solo on this." And she said, "I'm really hearing a cello solo."
The leader wins.
Well, so she said, "Why don't you set up in the booth?" So I set up in the booth, and I listened to set up the mic and everything and the headphones, and I take a solo, but I was only playing on the D string.
Right,
because I was in fifths, and I didn't want to take any chances on the other strings. So I played a decent solo, but I only played on the second string. I only played in the D string. So everybody said, "That sounds okay," but she said, "I'm really hearing a bowed solo on this." So I'm thinking, well, I can play with the bow, and I've taken a million bow solos on the string bass, but I never improvised on the cello before, especially with the bow. I just want to, and at the first week I was only playing scales anyway. So of course I said once again, I'm really hearing a pizzicato. No, I'm really hearing a pizzicato solo in this. And she says, "I'm really hearing a bow solo." So I get my rosin. I rosin up, and she said, "You want to try a take?" And I'm thinking, I need around 30 years of practice. Let's just run it. What am I going to learn how to play in 2 minutes? I have to learn how to play the instrument.
I'd like to
first.
hear this.
So I'm not sure about that. But so we do another take. I take a bow solo only on the D string. But it sounded okay. And I said to the engineer afterwards, lean into my microphone and said, "You made me sound like a cello player." I said, "What kind of mic is this?" And it was some kind of Neumann vocal mic. And he said, "Well, we used this on Eric Clapton yesterday, and we thought we'd use it on the cello." And in my mind, I'm thinking, if I buy one of these mics, I'll always sound like a cello player.
So you bought a mic?
If I practice, I'll sound like a cello player. So I didn't buy the mic, but so I got into the cello, and then I started doing a lot of side mandates, and I started doing steeplechase recordings on bass. But the leader would always say, "Can you play a couple tunes on cello?"
Right, so it's like you double.
So I kind of squeezed into it through that, and then Niels Winther, the owner of Steeplechase, said, "I want you to start doing cello records for me." And like I said to the other people, I said, I'm really hearing another bass record.
And he said, "No, I want to do cello records."
Because I had been making bass records since 1978 for him. So I've been making a lot of records for this guy on bass. So, of course, the first thing I say is, I'm really hearing bass on this. He said, "I'm really hearing cello," like everybody says. So I got into the cello. So now I make bass records for other companies and cello records for Steeplechase.
Wow, that's cool. But they sound great on the cello. I love the cello in jazz. I mean, I started listening to Oscar Pettiford, and I was like, wow.
One thing that's great for us as bass players, and if you think melodically like you do and you play beautiful melodies, you're already an octave lower when you're playing in the lower positions.
Yeah.
So when you're playing it higher in the mid register and even in the upper register,
it's still pretty low.
The thing is, the frequencies are so tight and they're so much closer together that you hear the melodies better, as opposed to in string bass when you're in thumb position. You hear the melodies like that, but it's only what would be the lower positions on cello. So if you're a melodic bass player, you can get all your melodies out there very easily. You just play.
Yeah, you don't have to go into thumb position, or
which doesn't sustain anyway pizzicato. Cello won't sustain pizzicato in thumb position, only with the bow. So you can audibly hear nice melodies much better on the cello. So that lends towards, if you know harmony, you can play on the upper structures of the harmony. You don't have to play on the bottom of the chord.
Yeah.
So I have, in this case, Andy's playing piano and Peter Zach's on some of the records. They can play the basic sound of the chord, and you can play in the upper structure.
And they're going to sound good.
So if it's a C7th chord on the page, I can play off a G minor 7 or G minor major 7. So because I'm in the upper part, I'm over here, changes are down there, bass player's down there, and you can hear everything on top, and the melodies sing even more than with the bass because of the frequency.
The cello's going to sing more, no question. Wow, that's great. Yeah,
but that's great for we play melodically, and it's great for bass players who play melodically because the melodies just jump right out of you.
Wow, yeah. Oh, that's cool.
I didn't realize that when I took it up. I just did it because I wanted to buy the cello.
I'm getting a cello tomorrow. No.
I think there's a lot of cellos
in
the shop.
They get everything here at the Kolstein shop. Cellos, basses, violas, violins, 3/4, full-size violins, you name it. But, your bass, you brought it into Barry, fixed your bass up. Barry Kolstein fixed your bass up. How is it?
It's never sounded better. I have, it's about 170 years old. It's Tyrolean bass.
You've had that bass your whole career.
My parents bought it for me when I was a junior in college.
Wow.
Which is when Lincoln was president, basically, at this point. And
you're lucky.
I've had this bass for 57 years.
You're so lucky to have had one bass. I've gone through 30 basses.
50. I knew you always have. Every time I see you online or
new bass,
you got to check out my new bass.
But now, since the last 2 basses I bought 2 basses here. I've been using them for like 7 or 8 years, and I'm never going to change. I get 2 of the greatest instruments. I'm so happy. It's amazing.
One of the reasons I don't buy new basses all the time, in addition to I like my bass, is I'm an intonation freak, and I only basically practice with the bow and play classical stuff. It's taken over 50 years to learn how to play this bass and tune. I don't really have the patience to learn how to play another neck, especially in thumb position where everything's.
Well, both of my basses are almost duplicate to play. And I even had Barry fix the bass because where I want my D, he made the
You did
saddle
that.
there. He
You did
brought it
that.
up a little bit. So everything's where I want it, and I'm very happy. So anyway, I think we got to go, but God almighty, this has been great. This has been great. Mike, I love you, man. You've been a
Great
good
to see
friend,
you.
you know, and you're a great bass player. And you know, we're going to keep going on this, and we may do some more. So, but whatever, you know, we do our bass meetings, so I'll see you there anyway.
Which I'll mention something about for a second. During COVID, Harvie started this international bass meeting on Zoom. So when everybody was kind of more than a little
We were
upset.
in shock.
Yeah, but we got a chance to see each other, 15 or 20
Every
bass
week.
players. Every week we were hanging out on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, and it was so much fun.
We had 30, 35 bass players.
It was so much fun looking forward to the week of getting together with your brothers, with your bass low-frequency
We
brothers.
shared videos and recordings and
You
jokes.
saved our lives.
Thank you.
You
Thank you.
saved our lives. And now we're still doing
And I
it.
had so much fun.
It was one of the greatest ideas I've ever heard about.
Thank you. My second greatest idea is bass in the corner and interviewing great bass players. So thank you, Mike. And what a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.